All right, hello. I'm Colin Davis of ShadowTechAlchemy.com, and I have with me Stephanie MoDavis of StephanieMoDavis.com. There will be links in the description. And Stephanie and I are friends of maybe 4 years. Me and Melissa were friends with Stephanie for several years, and we have talked a lot. We talk a lot, but we've never had an internet conversation, a recorded conversation. So we thought we would do that. And I think I'm going to let Stephanie give a little bit of just a short background on herself. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe people who see this know me, maybe not. My whole thing is shadow work, Jungian shadow work, and the intersection between spirituality and the whole red pill initiation and that whole thing. And then Stephanie has her background, so maybe you can, and what we're going to talk about today is that we're going to talk about the intersection of different kinds of spirituality and the spiritual community in general, and the whole red pill world, the political red pilling and all of that, and the pros and cons, and we're just going to kind of riff on that. So yeah, if you want to maybe just give a little bit of your background, Stephanie.
Sure, cool. Thank you, Colin, for having me.
Yeah, sure.
Nice to see you.
You
as
too.
Colin said, I've met both him and Melissa years ago, and I value and all the work they've done and everything they offer to the world. So Colin and I have continued to talk, and there's a nice intersection yet complementary difference slightly between us, because I've been brought up through more or less of the spiritual, religious and or new age lens. So I have a great wisdom in regards to what those communities really offer in terms of trying to attain some sort of level of inner balance and how it really affects the inner state. But I also understand the trappings of getting stuck in those particular holons or realms and not having the courage it takes to actually start to externalize into the world with some of that work. There's a proclivity towards a lot of introversion, addiction to introversion, escaping to the Himalayas as they used to in the past, and really being disconnected from the world. So part of my introduction into meeting Colin and Melissa was being red-pilled myself, following a spiritual awakening and understanding how I need to take particular wisdom that I've gathered throughout my history, and how do I take that and externalize that in the world. And in that process, what I was met with and what I realized is that a lot of people in the red-pilled movement who really are finding the gaps in the systems and going down the rabbit holes and finding all of the ways the system is corrupt and all of the secret societies and agendas and et cetera, is that I was noticing there's courage there, but there's also an imbalance of doing that deep introspection, inner work that I was so embedded in for so many years of my life.
Right.
So talking to you, Colin, it's nourishing for me, and it helps me to broaden my perspective and broaden my reality, because I understand this relationship between the inner and the outer. And I see now how sometimes you can go in and get stuck for far too long, although there's great benefit. And sometimes you can be very external, and you can be an adept researcher on all the corruption in the entire world and be voicing your opinion on podcast over podcast, but you're missing out on your own inner part of that process and the introspection required to have that true psycho-spiritual lens, which I think the world needs more than ever, is to expand beyond just externalizing or fighting the system. And we also don't want to become so spiritual that we're not participating in society.
Right.
So that's really a lot of the riffing that you and I do is surrounding these two realms and understanding the benefit, but then the shadow of both.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about all kinds of stuff, but that is always comes back to it. And then we look around in the world as we can see it on the internet usually, and we're looking for, okay, so where's our community? Because the red-pilled quote unquote activist who found out about 9/11 was an inside job, or such and such assassination and all the corruption like you're talking about, generally falls into this. They get they get angry about what they find and how they've been being misled and lied to. And then they go down the rabbit hole, like you said, and they can get lost down there. But a lot of times they become activists. They could become culture warriors. And I think this is healthy. This is a healthy reaction when you see, overt evil in the world. This is righteous anger, and this is healthy, and doing something in the world, even if it's just at the level of being a keyboard warrior, that's still positive. And then you start red pilling other people, and that's a useful mode. But you can't stay in that forever. And so what I often point out is I say deep state out there, deep state in here. And so that red pill initiation, I mean, it really is an initiation. It really changes your life. And then it kind of separates you from the rest of the world. Now, there's a lot more people who are red pilled now. And so you kind of enter into a community that's supportive. And so that's great. But for a long time, it wasn't really there so much. And you would just kind of you'd be ostracized, really, because when you try to go to the normies, to the blue pill people, and tell them what you're finding, they don't want to have anything to do with you. They don't want to hear it. So it was a real initiation where now you're like, okay, I'm on the outside, and what do I do here? And then it really reorients your whole life. And then you have to figure out, if the system is that corrupt, how much do I want to interface with the system? And what can I do to maybe pull away from the system? And then there's all kinds of options, and people are exploring all those options. But what I'm constantly saying is that, and this is pretty deep, and I don't think we're going to go into shadow work and all that stuff today so much, just in detail, but one of the big points that I've been trying to make is to try to help people understand, if you will just understand the basic Jungian idea of the shadow and where and what it is and how it's formed. It's sort of the equal opposite of the persona and the ego, and it's all of our natural primal darkness that is antisocial and which, when released, becomes what we call evil. Right? So it's all of our overt, sexuality and violence and narcissism and all of the sort of antisocial elements of us that are still part of us, but that we disown. And so we repress that material, and then we project it or displace it. It leaks out into the world in 1,000 little ways. Sometimes it's very overt, where we basically go, I found the source of evil in the world. It's the Arabs, or it's the Jews, or it's the Chinese, or it's the Christians, or it's the whoever it is. And then we start
my neighbor,
and we start taking action in the world. And then that displaces all that aggressive energy. And we use projection to do that. Or it just leaks out. It just all these little ways in which our lifestyle becomes parasitic or becomes hypocritical. And it's just kind of leaking out what Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil. And our shadow stuff just leaks out all over the place. And so basically what's happening is that what the red pill person is seeing in the world is how, what they're seeing at the psychological level is how the shadow manifests into integrated evil. And so we're looking at it out there, but we're not realizing that each and every one of us is dumping our own psychological sewage into the world. And once you recognize this, it doesn't mean that you don't take action in the world to stop evil if that's your mode. That's fine. But you also have to take responsibility for your own evil, and you have to start doing an accounting of your own shadow material and your own hypocrisy and how you're projecting and displacing. And you have to start to reduce that and have a practice, an awareness practice where you catch yourself and where you rescind your shadows, so to speak. And then you talk about it with your loved ones, with your family members, with other people in your community. And this whole shadow awareness and shadow work becomes a part of your lifestyle. It becomes a part of your whole worldview. And so now you're not as responsible. You're not just dumping your junk into the world. And then at the same time, this shadow work practice is the beginning of a much deeper lifestyle of psycho-spiritual wholeness and integration, as they say in the Jungian sense. And now this is the beginning of your whole trip, your whole spiritual healing and awareness trip that you go on. And so where you actually mature yourself at the deepest level. And so the shadow work is sort of the beginning of that. It goes on forever, but it's sort of the start of that. And we're just sitting here, just like right at the threshold, going evil out there, evil out there, evil out there, not recognizing that we're all creating it unconsciously. So what I say to the red pill people is, that's the first initiation. That's great. Got to go there. Got to wake up, got to wake up to that. But then you got to wake up to your own shadow and start your own practice and start doing that. And then where you go from there is just wherever you go. But this is the, in integral theory, the second tier. This is the highest state of consciousness and lifestyle that's probably available to us right now. And it's not just sitting and meditating and going into a non-dual state or whatever. It's living with this paradox of good and evil and how they're both operating through you and cleaning yourself and everything that goes with that. I have to go really into the kind of Jungian system to kind of go deeper, but that's kind of where I would put it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Now, I think I'm going to just kind of go back and add some things to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is that what I've discovered is that we all are in different places in our own evolutionary process. And there's different types of awakening. There's different types of catalysts that help to awaken people, whether it be a death in the family, a sudden illness, a red pill initiate. So, you come to enlightenment that things in the world have been set up corruptly. You have a spiritual awakening. People come to this sense of waking up differently. Mm-hmm. And it's important to know that we're all on a process from that point forward. And that process looks different. And there's different things and aspects that need to be integrated based off of the assessment of where that person came into the awakening. I'm picturing like a clock or something. It's like, all right, you came in here.
Right.
Now you're going to kind of do this. Oh, you came in over here. Now you're going to kind of do this. So when we come into our awakening, it feels so incredibly life-changing. It's a life-changing experience when you wake up and you start to do the research and understand what's going on at a greater level. And it takes energy. There can be righteous anger associated with it. There can be sadness, grief, depression. A lot of emotions can arise when you go through an awakening. But one thing to know is that, and this was very shocking for me when I went through my spiritual awakening, 2012 or so, was that I thought that I was onto something new and evolutionary, that I came into this knowledge and awakening, and I was very naive. When you first wake up, there's an energy that courses through your system, and people get very excited to talk and talk and talk and talk about it. But they have not had the degree of understanding and embodiment to bring it forth with wisdom. In the beginning, now that I've gone through my own awakening process for so many years, and I understand I'll be on it forever, is that I can always see when somebody's just popped open, because the level of expression is very familiar. And you can see it over and over again, is that there tends to be, if you've been introverted, your awakening will cultivate a confidence in your voice and extroversion. And you'll want to talk and you'll want to start to show up in this opposite or polarized energy because you've been reignited with a different sense of meaning and purpose and excitement, which is awesome. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes I've been very forward moving and external in my life. And now I've gone through this deterioration and awakening. And now I realize I need to retreat. Right. I need to do something different. And when you're so connected to a hold-on or identity for so very long, you build a lot of assets in your kingdom, right? Now your friends are red-pilled and your environments are all around red pill, and your home, and you start to build a kingdom surrounding this identity. So what happens when God, the Great Mother, calls upon you to move beyond it and drop that identity for an extended period of time, if not forever? It's
Right.
very difficult. And this is where you see nowadays, it's almost as though people have been plugged into identities and their entire life and career and well-being and financial status and everything revolves around the building of this kingdom as this identity. So how difficult, I mean, we can just, talk about different fields, the financial field, the medical field, et cetera. And people will say, why the hell are these people still complicit and complying to these lies? And why aren't they waking up? And why aren't they being courageous?
Right.
Because you've got to be willing to lose it all before you can gain the blind. And you have to have the blind faith, which is such the antithesis to the left brain oriented society that we have. You have to have blind faith, and you have to say, oh my gosh, this calling from upon my heart and soul may lead me to lose everything, and I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah.
So then you're faced with not only a severe cognitive dissonance, but a reality that sometimes you double down on, which actually is more unhealthy than starting the process of being honest and stepping into that blind faith. So we can get stuck in these identities because we've built kingdoms upon kingdoms
Right.
around.
Right. You're a doctor or a nurse or whatever, and your whole community talks a
Or
certain
even
way.
a red-pilled person or a new age person.
Right. You could go through the initiation and drop your professional identity and then find yourself in the red pill community, and now that becomes your new identity. And so, but this is another part of the process of awakening, is continuing to scrape off and have ego deaths and scrape off these identities, play with that character for a while, and then take off that mask, take off that costume, and play another character for a while, and realize that you are not the character, you are not the mask, you are not the clothing. You wear clothing, you use a mask, you have an identity it's your calling card, it's your business card, but it's not you. But most people are so identified, right? Which brings me to the identity politics or whatever. But most people are so identified with their characteristics. Hi, I'm a fireman, I'm Joe, and blah, blah, blah. Or hi, I'm Cindy, I'm a nurse, and this is who I hang out with, and this is how I talk, and this is what my interests are. It's an identity. And you become so stuck to your identity. And then your community, they're all stuck to their identity. So you're comfy in your little tribe, like you're saying. And then to change your identity will be to be rejected by the tribe. And so it's another initiation. And for the person who is on the spiritual awakening path, they have to be comfortable with basically not being inside any of these hold-ons or identities.
Or understanding how to move through them and around them without the judgment. So that takes a lot of time. But one of my friends gave me a valuable piece of advice. It's so simple. Whenever I would talk to her about struggling, trying to fight the system, she'd say, Stephanie, pop the bubble. Please pop your bubble. Pop the bubble. Pop the bubble. And what she was telling me was, you're stuck fighting the system, and you're fighting and fighting, and you've got all your friends who are fighting and fighting and fighting, trying to create justice. Meanwhile, it's falling upon unconscious ears of people who haven't even entered into an awakening process. And it's like ricocheting, the energy is just ricocheting out of them onto somebody who they think is going to listen and change, who can't even hear them. Right. And at that point, that's when the individual who's externalizing, fighting the system, has to say, this battle, this war isn't really going anywhere right now. It's like I'm just talking to myself. Right. And at that point, that's when you realize that you have a much broader investment regarding something within yourself that's driving you, that's keeping you fueled. It's coming from a past trauma, a shadow, a blind spot. I need to be right. I need to tell the truth, right? Like you hear this truth movement, freedom movement, right? And I agree. We need to have truth and justice in the world. But when you are just proselytizing that and you label yourself, I am a truth warrior, that immediately sends a red flag to me and says, this person has either been lied to or has trouble telling the truth themselves. And it's creating this added fuel to the fire for the justice that we do seek in the real world.
Well, they're getting stuck in that identity. They're the truth warrior identity now, and this is the particular truth that they have brought in. They're like, okay, this is my truth. This is my new ideology. And I'm going to proselytize on behalf of this ideology, and it gives you meaning. It gives you a sense of meaning and purpose. Is, wow, I have this. This is how the religious proselytizing works, right? You have this religious awakening, and then you're like, I have to tell the world about this and spread that to the world to alleviate evil. And then you can do the exact same thing with your truth movement, with your natural law movement, or your sovereign citizen movement, or whatever
your
version,
New Age movement, or whatever.
And so, so this is go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is one thing about the spiritual community it's just so embedded in me, and I'm so grateful for having come up through the realm of a good yoga community with solid teachers that were trained from masters in India. It's not your nowadays, kind of kamikaze yoga teacher training at your local LA Fitness. Like, I'm talking about actually getting stewarded by a master, right? And I'm so fortunate that I have that experience back in the day, because it is very much like, Bruce Lee, the martial arts. It's just very much of, if you have somebody who's very wise, they always direct you back to yourself for the answer. They're not going to sit there and give you the answer and give you here's the quick enlightenment app because you're too busy to do the work. Here's the app that you can follow and you can get that quick dose of gnosis so you can be enlightened. This is a long devotional lifetime process of spiritually awakening and going on this process of you discovering from within yourself that which you project out into the world, and that which truth is finding that inner peace that lies within you, no matter actually what is going on in the external world. Right. So I'm so appreciative to have that wisdom, because in that wisdom, it starts you with your locus of control of being inside and saying, your inner reality needs to get right. You will constantly be working on your inner reality. And that which is outside of you often is the projection. You're making it better or worse, whatever is lying out there. So it always is directing you. The first principle is your own inner state and the balance within your own psyche, your own spirit, your own emotions, and your own physical well-being. And the responsibility is always first and primary on the self. And sadly, within a lot of the external fighters we see in the world, is that their self is quite neglected. And and I can see that now because of the degree I was embedded in the yoga culture for so long, is that a lot of these, fighters in the world, they're giving all of their energy towards the fight, and then all of the other realms start to get neglected.
That's right.
This is when you see that, simple things. They're overweight. They're going
drinking.
They're drinking. They have addictions. They cheating. They can't financially support themselves, but they can be a really good fighter. It's like, so the yoga community and the spiritual community never decouples the balance of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And you get that right. It's like Jordan Peterson, clean your own room. It's like you get that right. And then you go out and you be a warrior. And when you start to get unbalanced, you stop what you're doing out there.
Yep.
And you immediately get back on your mat. And in fact, that devotional practice is a daily thing. So then it becomes an embodied part of your life that you always check in with yourself. And if you are imbalanced, you don't go out and fight the world that day.
That's right.
It's hard to do with certain people's careers. But if people have that locus of control being internal first and really committed to the work every day within themselves, they would be much more mindful about what they're projecting out. Because a lot of people are simply just projecting out their own feelings that they've repressed, but then putting it onto someone else. And you can start to see that, right? Like when you see people on social media and they start talking once you've done this degree of work, it's pretty easy to see the projection.
Yeah. Yeah, this what you're talking about with the warriors who are addicted to the warrior activity and all of that. This and a couple things come to mind. One is that if you have this natural warrior energy in you and it needs to come out somewhere, and it's not coming out in some other place in your life in a healthy way, and then you get red pilled, you're going to use this as a way to channel that warrior energy. You're going to tune into Alex Jones or whoever, and it's going to be like, yeah, and you're going to feel that warrior energy. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, you need something to do that. You need some kind of an outlet to be able to put that energy out there. And if fighting with people on Twitter is better than probably fighting with your neighbor or with your spouse. But so you have warrior energy that you have to channel in some way that's healthy. Now, it's kind of like this. We talked about this dichotomy between, let's talk about these two communities. So you have the spiritual yoga community, new age community, whatever we call it or whatever. And I often say that they wear their lover. Oh, wow, there's I have a little chameleon, a little lizard inside my house. Hanging out at the window right there. The spiritual people wear the lover on their sleeve. Like, this is the Robert Moore system where you have the royal, the lover, the magician, and the warrior, the four main kind of archetypes. And the spiritual people wear their lover on their sleeve, and then they repress their warrior. And then in this case, we're talking about the red pill truth movement people. They wear their warrior on their sleeve, and then they repress their lover, right? And so, and it can be, you can do that. It doesn't even have to be in red pill world, but it can, it's an orientation, it's a personality type. And so the person who's comfortable channeling their warrior energy, they have to get more comfortable with their feminine attributes, right?
And then being vulnerable.
There you go.
Being allowed to be emotionally vulnerable.
All feminine attributes. Absolutely. They have to start to bring that into their consciousness, put that in their persona. And then the people who are very comfortable with their feminine attributes, their identity is compassion and community and all of that kind of stuff. Right. They're repressing their warrior energy, and it's leaking out into passive aggressiveness and other kinds of stuff. Covert, right. And so then now they have to learn how to actually get their warrior energy and do something with it. And then that offends their community, of course. And so and then if you're in a masculine world and you're becoming a little bit more in touch with your feminine qualities and compassion and all of that, well, then that will offend your world. And so as you do this integration, you're going to absolutely lose you're going to have to, back to the identity thing, you're going to have to shed your identity and be a hold-on jumper and be able to go from one to the next. And so that has to be done.
Right. This is one thing that really, I honor our friendship, is because both you and I had an aspect of what we would call an alchemical relationship.
Yeah.
And it's a purification and an iron sharpening iron of these forces, which are masculine and feminine. And really, you're right. Sadly, we're not seeing many hold-on jumpers. We're not seeing too many people who have the ability to be multidimensional in their perspective enough to understand and discern when to be in my masculine and warrior energy and when to be in my feminine. Sometimes we see just an addiction with one, and people stay that way their whole life, and they get very offended by the other. It's almost like right and left. Yep. Red and blue.
Yep.
We've got the mommy and we've got the daddy, and we've got the optimized mommy and daddy, or authentic higher version, and then we've got the lower shadowy version of mommy and daddy, which is the dichotomy of control, and then the mother who just wants to let you do anything you want. Right. If you want to change your gender, that's totally fine. So what we need to do is we need to share and evolve so that we can understand what is the shadow variations of these two forces look like, because they're controlling our world right now.
Yep.
And then how do we take the process to try to enter into the higher variety version self of these two polar forces, which they would understand that they're completely opposite yet complementary, and it's not one
Right.
trying to sabotage the other. It's actually, they're very different, and we have these differences all over the ends of the clock, at the spectrum of the clock, as you said the other day. And how do we learn to take and appreciate the higher aspects of what all of those energies bring to the table, and understanding and seeing what the fragmented
Right.
or the unhealthy versions of those
Right.
are. And yes, those should be rejected.
Right.
But we don't just say, oh, mommy, or the feminine, or the sacred intuition, emotional vulnerability, connection to the divine should be just pushed out because she doesn't know what she's doing and she's overly emotional.
Right.
No, that's just the shadow side
Exactly.
of that energy. And you, my friend,
Right.
also have that same shadow side that's lying within you.
Right.
So we don't cancel each other.
Right.
We help to understand that these are lower nature expressions.
Right.
And we have to go on to a process to elevate so we can integrate.
It's a very important point, actually, is people will notice the shadow side of an archetype, like back to Robert Moore, the king or the queen, the shadow side of the king or the queen, or the shadow side of the warrior, or the shadow side of the magician, which is the Bill Gates or whatever, or the shadow side of the lover, the addict, and the polyamorous, cheater, or whatever it is, swinger, or whatever it is. And so people will notice the shadow side of an archetypal energy, and then they'll think that whole thing, that the archetype itself is evil or bad or something, but it's just the shadow side of it. So you have the light side of the warrior, you have the shadow side of the warrior, you have the light side of the lover, the shadow side of the same with all these archetypes. And we don't even have to simplify it into that. It can be, you can use any kind of model you want to show how that there is a natural archetypal energetic expression or drive in the human psyche, and it can manifest itself in a clean way or in a dirty way. And you don't want to confuse one of those. You want to be able to see that each of these there's a balanced way, there's a dirty way, there's a clean way, but the problem is the bigger problem is our psychological illiteracy. In the spiritual yoga world or whatever, they're more psychologically literate than in the conservative or the Christian world or the red pill world. They're more psychologically literate, but they are so they're doing so much spiritual bypassing, and they're repressing so much shadow material, and they're so afraid of their warrior energy and their dirty warrior energy and stuff, that and how it ruins their compassionate identity if they were to get in touch with that. And so that's their biggest problem. And then even though they have more spiritual or psychospiritual literacy, and then the other, just the average conservative or red-pilled, truth seeker or Christian conservative, they're psychologically illiterate. They don't have a toolkit. They don't have concepts to work with to understand what these energies are and stuff. And so, and just in general, as a society in America and in the West, we don't really have like we were talking about the other night, an enlightenment culture. They don't have an enlightenment path. They don't have an esoteric enlightenment culture. And so we're having to borrow from the ancient world or borrow from the East or whatever to try to get a hold of that. And when you just go back into the traditional, like what the conservatives are doing, they're saying, let's just go back into our Christian traditional mindset and all of that. But that is it's like Eric Neumann talks about, that's the old ethic where if you just go back to the old Christian conservative so-called mindset of a few hundred years ago, that was a mindset of projecting the shadow, the devil, onto other people, and then going to war with those people, which was convenient for a civilization that needed to expand. You could always find another group of people to carry your shadow for you. You could demonize them. You could go to war with them and then take their country over. You could just take over India or take over the Americas or whatever, and you could do it all in the name of Jesus Christ. And so we don't want to go back to that, because that's folly also. And so this is another part of the conversation is about the Christian revival and how, we could go into that. I'm not going to go on right there. I'm going to stop right there, but that is another place where we could go.
Yes. Well, my upbringing started out being raised by a fundamental Christian Bible scholar. So I grew up with, again, not having the emotional intelligence as a child to understand what religion was actually doing to what was supposed to be my strong and courageous father who helped me with structure in my life.
Right.
So I've come to realize that pattern that I experienced as a child is a very common pattern that you see in the world of traditional Christianity, is to not take self-responsibility and to more so pray about things than actually have that balance of introspection and being external and taking action in the world, and responsibility for our own junk is to pray it away. So I have both of those experiences of the Christian and the new age kind of the person as well. Is the deepest level of the shadow of both of those is not being self-responsible and facing the evil within ourselves and out in the world. So now all of a sudden you're just saying, "Oh, I don't mess with that dark energy."
Oh, the Christians, you mean? They just anything that has to do with evil, it's like, get behind me, Satan. Just, get rid of that. Get it off me. Yeah. They don't even want to look at it.
And I've experienced this with friends of mine who are Christian, where they're trying to evangelize, and there's so much psychic and psychological debris coming out in the way they're trying to evangelize, and I'm just seeing them like projecting their entire shadow onto trying to evangelize to someone else, and it's like, wow, well, this isn't progress either. This is just another way yet to avoid the evil in the world and the evil within. And again, you can't just pray for forgiveness constantly without a changed behavior. So there has to be a psychological dimension to actual evolution. It has to be psychospiritual, or you just continue to do the same thing and you use the excuse, well, God says I'm a sinner and I'm always a sinner and I just have to just keep praying away every time I do this evil thing in the world. The goal is to stop doing the evil thing in the world, or to address it and try to integrate it.
Right.
So that is the shadow of that. So I mean, there's so many wonderful things that Christianity also brings to the table, and the yoga community and the New Age community, and this aspect of the inward journey and the connection to light that is very important. We need to somehow balance this evil out with a true lightness, but it has to be an aware lightness, not a false light. And sadly, I think that's what's been projected too much into the world is a false light. It's a hopeful light, but it's not as self-responsible. I'm cleaning and purging myself to discover more light within, to emanate that into the world. Right,
exactly. It's and it's uncharted territory, really, though, because when I first took a long time to really understand the Jungian perspective on all of this, but then the idea was, okay, well, integrate the shadow, your whatever material it is, it's aggression, or it's sexuality, or it's grandiosity, or it's grief, or guilt, or whatever it is. Integrate it by coming in contact with it, basically sometimes, emotionally processing it, crying through it, or displacing it in some healthy way, recognizing this aspect of yourself, tracing it back to your childhood and all that kind of stuff. But that's the shadow work. That's the work that we do. But at the same time, once you realize we're built on these mammalian bodies, right? And we have these drives, and no matter how much you contact them and go, okay, I recognize that I have that monkey part of me, I have that primal part of me, or even that reptilian part of me, and you work with it and all that. Do people that work with that energy, does it ever go away? Do you ever stop being a mammal? Do you ever stop being a human or part reptile? And the answer is no. And so while the method of projecting, of displacing, of blaming, and all of that other people, it looks from this point of view very primitive, and it looks like that's not what you want to do to become an enlightened person or a more advanced human being. But at the same time, we haven't actually reached a state of evolution where we can, I imagine a future where we actually have sort of physically evolved to the point to where you could do this shadow work and actually, I mean, we would have to become like another kind of a species, really, to not have all this primal material within us that needs to go somewhere. Or I kind of imagine sort of a future where it's like Star Trek in the holodeck, where you go into this virtual reality, and then you could act out all of your shadow drives and stuff in that virtual reality and move that energy, and then you wouldn't have to dump it into the real world. I can sort of imagine ways in which we might evolve to be able to work with all this shadow energy. But right now we're kind of in the midway place where we're just now at the point to where we can even become aware that we have it and start working with it, and it does help you and it does clear you and it does help, but it doesn't fully solve the problem that we're built on these animal bodies. And we haven't really figured, we can't eliminate evil yet, but we can certainly mitigate it, and we can certainly clean up our own mind bodies a great deal but with this kind of awareness.
Yeah, this is one of the trappings that the New Age community gets caught in, is developing and cultivating the light body and ascension and working on this. They would say lightening of the frequency by doing a lot of this sort of work. But the degree is that we should all be considering that we're preparing for heaven, right? So we're doing the work wherever we're going. Let's do the work to prepare for the place that we're going. It's not that you're going to change in this realm, right, on Earth. You're not going to change into that avatar here on Earth. We just, the density, the gravity, the laws of physics we have, just who we are. The mammal brain, like you said, doesn't allot to ascend into your light body, right?
Right.
The New Age community is blurring dimensions, right? It's like, remember where we are. We live here with gravity and very real things. You know, you can't just go to the edge of a cliff and say, my light body is just going to float me out of here. No, you're going to fall to the ground because we have gravity. So this is where the trapping of doing that work gets too extended, and now you're bypassing reality. And that's where we seem to create these blinders, because the ego gets high on its own supply when we feel like we become so advanced. Or I'm getting a lot of attention in the red-pilled community, and look at all I'm creating. So everything you do, when you get higher in that identity, you start to lose vision because you're getting high on your own supply. And then your path becomes narrower, and it's harder to pop your bubble from that identity to see more broadly. It's almost like you start to go blind because you've become so myopic and going so high in this one particular expression of your identity. Now you can't see, and we can't connect with everybody else that's on a different place in their evolutionary journey. So my feeling is doing this sort of work helps us to stay in compassion and empathy for people wherever they are at. Instead of fighting one particular demographic that we're against and staying stuck in this battle, this duality, is how do I hold the knowingness and the capacity to sit with empathy wherever anybody's at, if they're just waking up, if they've just been red-pilled, if they're just finding their voice, if they're just having a relationship with their masculine or anima or animus for the first time, or their feminine for the first time. How do people start to see and hold space for everybody, no matter where they're at, to help us evolve collectively, instead of just this right and left hemisphere battle that we were so primal in where we're at, actually.
Well, this takes me to Ken Wilber's integral theory, because in that system, what he talks about second tier is once you've kind of got to this little bit higher level, it's not that far beyond where we're at, level of psychosocial consciousness, then you're kind of like a system, like a hole-on jumper. Then you can go and you can see, okay, here's the polytheistic people, and here's the monotheistic people, and here's the scientific rationalist people, and here's the progressive green communal pluralistic people, and all these different communities. And you can see how they all have their pros and cons and everything. And then you can kind of just sort of bounce between them and go, this one has an aspect that I need, or this one has an aspect that I need. And you can, form your own kind of what is the word I want to use here? Oh, holistic. It's a holistic framework, and have a holistic community with other people who think holistically. And then when you're at that level, you're not trapped in the good, evil, right, wrong, my side, their side thing, even though that will pull on you, because those are lower levels of consciousness, and they are there. And that tribal mindset will pull on you. It's not that by having this, what they call center of gravity at second tier, means that you'll never have these pulls from these lower places. But it means that you won't be situated there all the time, and you won't be so attracted to all the different games that are played in those lower levels. And where the in that system, the Christian conservative or Christian red pill or whatever, they're in what's called they're somewhere between what's called amber and orange, which is like the old mythic understanding and the scientific rationalist understanding. And they're kind of going between both of those. And it's been interesting to see how, even fundamentalist Christians that believe that the Bible is literal truth and all that are still able to operate in a scientific, rationalist, atheistic world at the same time, and just have two compartments. And so they can, and just say have their academic compartment and then their religious compartment, and they're just like there. And then you have the next level, the progressive, pluralistic, green mindset, and they're able to operate between the scientific rationalist mindset and the pluralistic green mindset, and two different compartments and stuff like that. But it's very interesting how we can do that. But at second tier, you can have all those as compartments, and you can know those are compartments and go, oh, okay. And you're not triggered by the Christian point of view. You're not triggered by the rationalistic, academic, all science and all that kind of stuff, and machines and all that. And you're not triggered so much by the green people who want community and pluralism and equity and inclusion and all that. And you understand that. You're not triggered by it. You're like, okay, it has its place. And then, but you're able to make a recipe out of the pieces of all of that. And that's where we need to go.
Yeah, this is taking me to Richard Schwartz and IFS, is that if you were to take the IFS model, which you do upon yourself, and you start to understand the parts of you and the relationship between these parts, and you take that into the collective realm, is if you understand that there's parts all over the place. And often there's things about all of those parts that you need to integrate to become more holistic. And if you're fighting that piece of you, then the only way you can survive is if you create separate compartments, and you compartmentalize and you fragment your consciousness. So then you don't have the ability to have holistic connection and relationship with each of your parts. That's the goal, is to say, I have all of these different parts of me, and the relationship needs to be honest, authentic between these parts of me. But if they're not, and they're in a compartment, lo and behold, one day you will come up against something where those compartments within yourself, maybe it looks like it's out in the world, but it's within yourself, start to go to war. And then you hear things like, oh, now I'm in an epic battle between my own head and my heart, or my own this and my own that. It's because you haven't created the empathy and understanding to have a holistic, good relationship between the different parts of you. They're not
well, because those parts, when they fragment and they form their own little dissociated little area, that like a wounded child part or whatever, when it gets fragmented, then it recruits, in IFS, it recruits protectors, it recruits manager parts to kind of make sure that it's secure in its little compartment, safe from harm.
I want to pause you because that's the same thing.
Same thing.
That happens externally when you're now the boss in your company and you have this compartmentalized mindset is you're going to recruit or hire all these little minions around you that are supporting this isolated and insular identity.
Right, exactly.
And
as
often,
above, so below. That's our primary maxim. Yes.
Right. And then you can become very high in whatever that piece of knowledge is within that small insulary space, but you become blind and you think you may be at the highest degree of understanding or innovation in that particular area, but it's because you're surrounding yourself with people who all have the same thought process. You have a tribe around you that's protecting you. And this is why we get into these positions where we'll say, like, how can the medical community still be proselytizing like vaccines or this when we have all this information? Is because you're locked in a compartment in real life and in your own mind. That's keeping you from popping your own bubble to evolve and develop and have more compassion and to help evolve society. You're now doubling down on this space because you're all so high on your own supply. And you got all the minions around you to support you. So that's where identity, you have the same thing within as without. But this is where people need to be aware of what you're plugging into. And be aware that anything you're plugging into, no matter how righteous it feels, has a trapping. And you have to start to develop the discernment of like, oh, I'm addicted to watching these red pill videos, or I'm addicted to, like, I've been all out of my wits watching new age videos. Someone has to pull you back and say, okay, stop, go back out into the real world now. Go out into nature, or you're over here. But the problem is that I think that we're yearning and hungry and lonely and all of these things. So we all want to be high.
Yes.
So it's like we just keep pushing and pushing in that one space instead of, because nothing will make you more low than to face your own reality. And to really look at yourself in the mirror. It's a humbling experience that cultivates a lot of emotions.
It's the opposite of being high.
It's the opposite of being high. And for most people, they would rather distract themselves to the end of the earth, or the addiction, or the awards, or whatever.
Stay high,
high. And the thing is that I realize after all of this time is that high is not balanced.
No.
High feels good. High is great.
High is great for a moment. You've got to have some high.
Exactly. And you do have to plug into some high if you're a little too low. But to be able to self-regulate and just to be able to recognize I'm too high or I'm too low. What can I do about it, rather than picking up the phone? Oh my gosh, doctor, I'm feeling really low now for the past 2 weeks. No, just self-regulate yourself and say, I'm going to be high, I'm going to be low. And my goal is to have this awareness so I can stay at a little more of a happy medium. And we just don't have that. It's just like we're either one or the other. And then who can help me? Right.
It's not in our background, because our Christian background is all about getting to heaven and the light and growth and all of that. And anything that has to do with darkness and depth and everything is scary and to be stayed away from. So it's built into our whole thing. And we don't really have, like they have in the East, they have the yin yang, they have that general understanding that the light and the dark, the duality principle, and that the yin and the yang, they're of equal size. So you cannot actually, if you think that you're going to defeat the duality principle and have 80% high and 20% low, that's not going to work. Nature's going to come in and pull the rug out from under you and say, no, you're not the dark forces are going to say, you need more of me. Persephone is going to take you down into the underworld, and she's going to say, you need to spend time in hell now. And you're going to get it one way or another. So you better have some kind of a system, some kind of an ethic that takes that into consideration and says, like what you were saying, for everything that is attractive to you, there's a dark side to it, a shadow side to it, and that should be in your consideration constantly.
And this is an important facet to this, especially amidst all this AI and godlike technology that we have, is that in this process, people who go through this and commit to this inner self study are very aware that there is a universal force, God, that should be feared because it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And if God's calling you and you keep shutting the door and he's knocking and you're like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. He will hit you over the head with a 2x4.
You're headed for a fall.
And this is something within the yoga community and the spiritual community that we always knew is like, God is always trying to send you messages regarding your own inner state of balance and harmony and your progression, according to him, not you.
Right.
Are you listening to the signals that your body is giving you? Through a pain, through a thought, through a stress, an emotion, are you listening to your feelings? Your emotions are your greatest teachers to show you where you are in or out of alignment.
Right.
And so often we're just terrified to feel. And Tobias Lars, who you know, always says you got to feel to heal. And we're in a society right now that's just really repulsed to truly feel. We will do everything we can to bypass the ugliness of our feelings and the embarrassment of just saying, you know what, I'm lonely, or you know what, I'm broke, or you know what, I'm fighting out here because my life is falling apart behind the scenes. We're like terrified to have a meaningful, honest human conversation.
Yeah, and we don't, and we would figure out how to tolerate the shadow side, the dark side, and the downswings if we had leadership, if we had mentors, if we had wisdom teachers in our civilization that were reminding us of this and saying, okay, this is how you work with this, and this is part of the duality meta program, you could say, that we're in here in this simulation, or however it works. This is part of the deal, and you have to learn to work with this. And every time you fall down, this is a time to reorganize yourself. This is actually where growth and evolution comes from. It comes from the dirt. It comes from destruction. You have to destroy. You have to fall apart in order to be reborn many times in life. And this is part of the deal, but we're not being reminded of that. We don't have wise enough mentors, leaders out there that are doing that, or that we have a lot of these people, but they're unknown basically to the general public. Somebody like Jordan Peterson gets up there and he's getting close to that, but then, you know, he's got his limits as to what he can do, right?
It needs to be a collective effort. And just as you were saying, you know, we have too many ways to distract ourselves out of our evolution.
Yeah.
We are being bombarded. I mean, the entropy is real. And if you really want to experience an awakening process, you really have to be almost countercultural, at least for a period of time, to be able to even to have this experience. And it's an incredible experience because if you devote yourself and you commit to the work, you do find that sense of inner peace and strength and stability mentally, physically, spiritually, that's so incredibly needed to navigate these times of increasing quickening and chaos and everything coming at you. If you want to be, you know, I shared that video with Nate.
Which
yesterday.
I ended up, you know, I was dissing him on the phone, but then I actually listened to it and I was like, yeah, okay, I got you.
He did a very good job.
Yeah.
And you know, basically, he's saying that the commodities of the future aren't going to be what we think. It's going to be like, do you have mental stability? Do you know how to self-regulate yourself? And yes, it's financial, and yes, it's, you know, different things. But a lot of this is going to be, can you mentally stay grounded in a time of such increasing chaos and distraction?
Yeah.
These are going to be really important facets of us navigating. I mean, it's already started, you know, it's like, can you stay grounded amidst all of this? Can you keep your own basic needs met amidst all of this? Can you support with empathy amongst all of this? You know, when you start fighting, it's almost like, you know, you have to stop and reframe yourself so you can serve. There's a difference between serving and fighting.
Oh, well, yeah. Fighting is often, I mean, fighting should be a very temporary thing that's done for a specific reason for a specific time. That thing with that, what's his name, Nate Hagen?
Yeah, Nate Huggin, the great simplification.
Yeah, okay. Oh, right. I've only seen, you've been watching him longer than me. So the quadruple bifurcation, the four ways that he sort of conceives of society splitting up. And the one you were just talking about is the one I'm most interested in, is the one where the people, the sort of split between the people who figure out, there's many different ways to do this, figure out to live a grounded, happy, healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy life, and those people who go insane.
Right. Or those people who are very codependent on unhealthy systems or the medical model or
That's
drugs,
insane.
or it is insane.
That's insane. So those people who don't do, and so this is where, where this is one of the big trip ups with people, is when whether they're politically red pilled or they have a spiritual awakening or something, and they recognize, okay, my reality, my belief system is shattered, but also my lifestyle and the way I've been working. Maybe I've been working for this corporation or for this hospital, or I had this career path or whatever. And then you wake up to it and you see that it's parasitic and that it's unhealthy, and that you've tried to kind of find a healthy part of it, but your peers don't want to go there with you and stuff. And you're like, what do I do? And it's like this. What ends up happening is you have to now very carefully and consciously carve out a much more healthy, less parasitic, more outsider lifestyle for yourself. You might have to physically move. You might have to change your career. You have to probably get rid of all the debt and all that kind of stuff. What he calls it, the great simplification. Is that what he calls it? Yeah, you've got to completely simplify, and everything has to go down to a quieter, more simplified, more grounded, more natural lifestyle. And you've got to have to just back out of the matrix. And so this isn't just a mind thing, but this is your physical footprint in the world. You need to creatively homeschool your kids. You need to creatively figure out how to clean up your axis. In integral theory, it's the lower right-hand quadrant. You need to be able to clean up your actual way in which you interact with society.
Mm-hmm. Colin, for those people who haven't seen you talk about your quadrant model, would you just explain that really quick?
Oh, okay. Well, really quick, because but people can glaze over and stuff on it. But in Ken Wilber's integral theory, he figured out that there's kind of four main ways that people look at the world. The first person perspective, I, like my feelings, my mind, my consciousness, my beliefs. The second person perspective of we, and that's like our shared values. That's our Christianity. That's our ideologies, our worldviews that we share with community. That's the we culture quadrant. And then there's the third person quadrant of it, where you can basically recognize everything as an it and go, a body, okay, it has moving parts and blah, blah, blah. And you can sort of see the it side of being a human. And then the its side, the fourth one of these quadrants is third person plural, where you can see how we all get together and make societies and we make institutions. And that's where people talk about the system. That's the third person plural. So when you study any subject and you pick up a book by an author or something, they're usually addressing one or maybe two of those perspectives on life. The psychological people will be in the upper left-hand quadrant. The cultural people will be the lower left-hand quadrant. The physical materialists will be in the upper right-hand quadrant, and the sociologists and people will be in the lower right-hand quadrant. So it's like four quadrants of perspective, and really the world is all of those are we're addressing all of those one way or another. And so what the holistic thinker does, what the second tier thinker does, is they take every subject and they look at it through all four of those. And they go, okay, well, where is my subject in each of these perspectives? And so what I did was I just said, okay, my subject is the shadow of the psyche, or the shadow of the culture, the shadow of the body, the shadow, where is the shadow in each of those quadrants? And so, in one quadrant, the I quadrant, that's your psychological shadow that Carl Jung talks about. And the lower left-hand quadrant, that's the cultural shadow. That's a lot of what the red pill people are looking at. All the isms. You have the Marxism and the communism and the wokeism and the Nazism and all the different isms and toxic worldviews and all of that. They're looking at that. And then I said, well, where's the shadow in the body, in the third person perspective? Oh, well, that's disease. That's all of our syndromes and symptoms and everything that we have. And then where's the shadow in the society? Well, the red pill people are looking at that too. And that's out the way in which the system is rigged to benefit certain people and to oppress others or to defraud others. That's the whole way in which the system is rigged. That's what we call the matrix or whatever. And so the red pill people are focusing on the culture and the system, and they're not so much looking at their own psychology or their own body. Right. And so that's where you got to merge them. You got to have focus on all four of those. And if you're interested in highlighting evil, the shadow, the dark side, well, okay, you found it in the culture, you found it in the system. Now find it in your own psyche, in your own mind, and find it in your own body and clean those up too. You got to do it holistically.
Yeah, if people watching haven't experienced this more fully, there's nothing more fulfilling than being in communication and relationship with people who can hold that capacity and that sense of holding themselves accountable in every realm, in every place. It's deep, it's vulnerable, it's meaningful, it's transformative. Every conversation becomes a possibility to evolve and a potential to transform, rather than saying, well, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to work 100 hours a week for however long. And then once a week, I'm going to go to Hawaii and I'm going to go on a retreat and I'm really going to have an awakening for that 1 week. This becomes something that you evolve very rapidly because you're participating in your own life experientially, using everything in your life's experience as a potential to evolve, every interaction. Right. So I remember when I was working with the doctors, when I was doing the Awakening Healthcare thing, and I was coming to the realization of the different levels of intelligences that are available, is that there's cognitive intelligence, there's IQ, there's emotional intelligence, there's musical intelligence, there's spiritual intelligence. There's all of these different facets of intelligence. And when you have a patient's life in your hands and you're showing up with one dimension of that intelligence, you're missing such a profound opportunity to steward a patient in a holistic direction. And I started to very quickly realize, oh my gosh, our doctors actually aren't awake.
Right. Yeah, we can let's go in this direction now. Right. Your realizations of trying to bring some reform into the healthcare system, and then finding out that they're really just not at a place where they can even understand you.
No, and that was very it was awful for me, because I felt like through my 20-year experience that God had given me some real insights on how to improve patient care and long-term outcomes. But then...
You didn't describe to listeners that you had some kidney transplants, did you?
No.
So you had a lot of experience with the medical system. Yeah.
Chronic illness when I was 19 started. Could have been from various different environmental reasons, but autoimmune illness, which a lot of people are facing right now. Yeah. And there's certain things that are potentially contributing to the rise of autoimmune condition and cancers and mega cancers. So everything is quickening. And it's such a profound invitation to do inner work if you have an illness and you've never done it, because very often you're laid up. So there's no better time than to start to do a self-reflection process. Now, somebody like Melissa or myself had already had that encoded in our psyches when we were going through our illnesses. So we just continued that process. But for most people, profound sudden illness is just an initiation for an inner process to start to take hold. And the medical system often is in their warrior mentality in the masculine end, and they want to control the process through medications and surgery and operations, and we're going to kill this, and we're going to just get rid of this invitation completely so you can get back out and live your life and not even address the reason you got here to begin with.
Exactly.
It's such a profoundly, it's just Pollyanna.
Yeah.
Now that I've been through this process for 25 years plus, I see how incredibly naive the system is operating, whether they see it or not. I'm just like, it's so psychologically and emotionally naive. But we're creating a story where, healthcare in the West is the most innovative and pioneering it's ever been. And look at all of our tech, and look at all these things, and look at all our fancy hospitals we're building. And oh my gosh, it's like a museum. Like, look at all of this. Meanwhile, we're not brave enough and courageous to say, like, all of this innovation, and we're still not healthier.
We're very unhealthy. Like in first world nations, we're down at the bottom. So our system is an abysmal failure. Trillions of dollars invested in it and all the smartest minds, and we're not healthy.
And it's failing. Even these highly intelligent providers don't have the egoic capacity often to say, you know what, you're right. And like, yes, my whole life has been focused in this one area. And yes, we help certain people to a certain degree. And yes, there is good things about it, but you're actually right. And we need to do so much better. It's like they're often doubling down on the innovation and the good side, and not really, again, they can't psychologically they're not at that level of conscious development to hold the paradox and say, there are some people that we help, and I've dedicated my entire life to this, but yes, it is an abysmal failure too.
Yeah, because it's a one quadrant view. In the Wilbur system, it's the upper right-hand quadrant. It's the materialistic third person it perspective. The body is an it, and we work on it like it's a car. We replace parts and all of that kind of stuff. It's an it, not realizing that the human being has a this is your idea of the subjective experience, or we have a subjective inner state that's contributing to the state of the body. We have a cultural worldview state, and we have a lifestyle state, and all of these are part of the whole thing. And the doctor doesn't know or care anything about those other quadrants.
Yeah. What story are you telling yourself? Tell me more about what's actually going on. What's on repeat in your own psyche, in your own emotions, in your own life? It's so many things that we miss the mark on. And actually, I hit a wall with the subjective experiencer, not only in the medical realm, but also in the natural law community. I tended to hit a wall there because they're so hyped up on objective morality. Which again, to me, is part of the masculine dimension of it, which is very important to be realistic and understand objective reality. But if you are doing that at the behest of, like, just completely ignoring that we all have a subjective reality too, and you're telling yourself a story, then you're missing half of the whole. You have to really go in to identify those dimensions of understanding where objective reality has its utility. But along with that is a story that you're telling yourself every single day. And if you don't address the subjective story that you're in and you're telling yourself, then how can you ever actually improve? Because you're a victim of whatever objective morality is then.
Yeah, the objective.
But that's the academic. That's the academic block.
Yeah, the natural law. My familiarity with that community, like I've told you, was from like 15 years ago, and it was a slightly different version of the current version of that now. But this is where back to Peterson. I think he actually, the quote unquote postmodern academics. There's these French postmodern philosophers that notice, this is coming out of the 60s, that inside of every worldview, there's these built-in suppositions. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at the world through, the lens that you have, they would say patriarchal lens or whatever. And when you look at the world through this particular lens, this patriarchal lens or this Christian lens or this rational lens or whatever it is, then what you see as truth is is actually subjective because it's subject to all of those built-in assumptions that come with it. And so they recognize that, well, wait a minute, what you call truth and what you call objective truth is actually not really objective except for inside that holon, inside that worldview, then it's objectively true. But if you get outside of that worldview, well, then it loses its objectivity. And so basically this is how you can have a world full of different cultures where everybody thinks that they're seeing the objective truth. And so the postmodernists kind of broke out of that and said, no, everything is relative. These truths are relative. Now that's an affront to anybody that's trying to hold on to their worldview and seeing truth through their lens. And whether it's the materialistic rational lens or whether it's the mythic monotheistic lens or whatever lens it is, and that there is a subjectivity to all truth. And that's something that the postmodernists got right. What they got wrong was they didn't realize that they then, as postmodernists, come up with their own worldview, and then they get stuck in that, and they can't see that that is also a subjective reality that you can break out of and you need to get above and beyond. But what the rational or what the truth community or the what are we calling it? What is the community called? It's not
truth, freedom, natural law
community and stuff like that. They're still getting stuck in this objective world, and they should allow the postmodern realization to break that up so that they can go, okay, so here's our natural ethics that we inherited from thousands or millions of years, and this is what natural law is, and it's proven. Start to look at it through that deconstructionist lens, and start deconstructing what you think are natural laws and objective truths. Start deconstructing those and pulling that apart, and then you can continue to use the parts that work for you, but you don't need to take that on as your new insular identity that you can't see out of anymore.
Right, exactly. And in fact, I'm very, very cautious nowadays of really solidly putting all my eggs into any basket.
Yeah.
Because I fully understand, okay, I'm probably missing something if I'm doing that. And, it's interesting because part of my training, I did a lot of studying with a woman named Anadea Judith, who's really considered the modern master of the chakra
I've heard
systems.
of her, yes.
I was able to train with her one-on-one for quite an extended period of time. And I was very blessed because the chakra system is actually a very wonderful map, really helping people to understand through the lens of pretty much emotional development, where somebody is imbalanced, and then also offering what it looks like when somebody's on one end of duality or spectrum and on the other. So she would call it the hyper or hypo deficiencies in an emotional realm that's connected to that particular energy center. So a chakra is considered an energy vortex or an energy center. Yep. 7 primary that lie along the spine that go from the base to the crown. Right. And then you've got the Sushumna and the the Sushumna, and there's another word I forget, but that's the masculine feminine principle. Yep. And then they're connected really through the endocrine system, through the nerve channels, through the endocrine system. Right. So basically, through that mapping, it's such a great way to understand through the knowledge of each particular energy center. People know intuitively when you go over the information. They know intuitively where they need work or where they have deficiencies or excessiveness. They just know from the information. And then it's kind of an experiential, intuitive way to help them develop, because people need a lot of help actually understanding how to trust their intuition and navigate experientially through the lens of the unknown. They have to go within and feel their way through this, which is a really beautiful practice.
Yes.
And they can see where they're hypoactive or they're hyperactive. And then it gives you practices and very practical tools to start to recognize those imbalances within yourself, and then to have a course-corrected method to find your center point. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to start to self-regulate. And in this system, We would say, and it's often noted, that most people in society live at the lower three chakra levels, right? Which is the base, the sacral, and in the tummy, the egoic level, or the level of transformation in the third chakra, right? And that it's very, very difficult. It's like a steel wall between the third chakra center and the fourth. Now, when you go into the fourth, which is the heart, breaking out of the identity and deconstructing the identity to open up the heart chakra. And that's been told to me is the great work of where we're right now, is to break out of the lower three, lower nature chakras, be able to deconstruct your belief system so you can open your heart and soften into that feminine nature of reconnecting with natural law, nature, the intuitive, the sacred, right? I mean, obviously, it can go all the way up through the, third eye, crown chakra, and work towards that enlightenment path. But that's not really useful right now. We don't really need people sitting in the Himalayas or really being in an enlightened state of consciousness. We need practical, real world love and empathy and change and transformation. So that work of moving through the belly into the heart, so you can have a multidimensional perspective with compassion.
Right. Now, the Christians really do have the heart aspect, though.
They do.
They do have that. Yeah, they do have Jesus, right? And he's always the Sacred Heart. They always, but
it's a hypoactive form of the potential of the heart. See, so the heart would be really where we're combining the sacredness of the heart, but also having the discernment of to me, it would feel like the combination of the right and left hemisphere, understanding when to operate when. So you're kind of resting in awareness of compassion, but also being discerning of when you need to step up and take action towards something. And I think in our modern world, it's the opposite. We're always in a reactive state of mind and ready to react, and we're hardly ever resting in presence or resting in awareness.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Right. Well, that's true. We're totally externalized and distracted, and just constantly it's all out there, and more endorphins and all of that. Yeah. We're in a bad place right now. Yeah. Just the Americans especially. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like we're just spinning out of control. Everything's quickening. And you're either distracting yourself or looking for ways to try to find some peace in the moment, or just lying like crazy.
And if you join the system, you've got your job and you're rat racing around in traffic and all that kind of stuff. And you can't have a balanced life that way.
So let's just maybe we can wrap up and just talk about some very, very basic things people can do. So let's break it apart a little bit into different hold-ons. So let's say...
One thing that came to mind that I want you to talk about is the intuition part, because that one was the one I had my big red pill moment, which was kind of around the time I had to start my shadow work, 2005. That was kind of for the first kind of few years. I was doing all these intuitive sciences, astrology and tarot and the I Ching and dowsing, and I was developing my intuition. So that is really, you have to do that.
This is something that I the Christian community, I think, again, they would war on me with this, but for many people, that highly esoteric world of developing and cultivating the intuition, to them looks like idolatry and sin and other false gods and worshiping the stars in the sky, and it's a part of reconnecting to one's innate, intrinsic ability to be in this world. It's a profound for many people. Now, again, many people get stuck there, right?
Oh, right.
Now I'm Steffi the astrologer, and that's all I do.
Yes.
For an evolver, like you've used that term before. Yeah. For an evolver is that you're going to spend time in different realms to recalibrate the parts of us that we've suppressed or ignored or haven't yet developed. Right. So when I see women going through what I call the witch program, which you see that a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Is, okay, she's reacquainting herself with her own feminine intuition and the deep sacred skills that God has bestowed upon her through this character of, I'm living the Stevie Nicks dream, or like I'm doing the Reiki and the the saging, and I'm like,
Right. The feminine magicianship. Yes.
right. But in a way, do you see how that too then can become very imbalanced? Because then you think your sage stick is going to course correct your toxic family's behavior when they enter your house. It's not, right? So like, to me, again, because I've been through that so long ago, I see the value in it, but I also see the immaturity. It's part of the process. It's like, okay, now they're in that part where they're reacquainting themselves with that mystical, esoteric, very beautiful, very unseen dimensions. And how do you express something unseen? You don't. And if you want to have a form of expression, that's what it sometimes looks like.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's like you said, like it's all a movie, right? So okay, here's
right. That's a fiction, but there's truth in the metaphor that it's representing.
Right, and that's the whole thing with the the story part of this. You're always saying, it's just
the
a story.
It's a movie. Yeah,
the movie. This is just a movie.
Right.
Is that we aren't acting out. The story's not out there. We are the story. It's like we are creating these fantastical elements to our story constantly and expressing it in the real world. We could be doing this all within, but as humans, we are storytellers and we're creative and we express. I mean, I do this for myself. Truth be told, like there's sometimes I just want to feel really creative and feel that feminine thing, and I use it through my fashion. I start dressing up and now we know people like this. They dress as their identity, as a form of expression to show people where they're at.
Yeah.
The real master has no clothes. They don't care. They don't have to look a certain way, right? But it is fun at times to embrace these different characteristics as a part of who we are.
Yeah, of course.
But the intuition, exploring with that realm. This is when you see guys doing tarot. Or you see, guys doing astrology, and you can look and there's waves of these things, right? So maybe somebody is awakening to their feminine principle, getting in touch with their intuition, and again they think like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, and does everybody else know about this? And oh my gosh, I can't wait to show everybody that I'm doing, Reiki readings right now, only to find out that men have been doing this for years upon years upon years, and expressing it in different ways. We always feel like we're the first one to come into this, but it's like, no. This is your coming into this. This is your awakening point, plug-in point that you're at. And you're always going to find other people out there in the world who are plugging into that same thing when you are, and that's when you have social media followers.
Right. You have your new little community, and then that's your new little identity, and you can play around with that for a while. Yeah, they're where you're at.
That's why it's so difficult if you're newer to a social media type of community and you're an evolver.
Now, what do you say to the people, because we're having this Christian revival right now, and there's all these people, red pill people who are going back. Either they're getting baptized for the first time, or they're going back to church, or whatever it is, or they're changing to another denomination, or whatever it is. And this is all happening. And then they got their cross, and they got their cross over here, and it's part of their persona now. And then now they're in the Christian club and all that kind of stuff. So there's an identity part of it. There's a community part of it that they're craving, and that's why they're going into it. They're also seeing it as sort of an antidote to all the shadow stuff that's going on in the society, and they're like, I need to be in the good club or whatever, and so they see that. But there's also a spiritual component where they detect, that I need this. I need a spiritual connection in my life. I need to get into my heart. I need to get with Jesus and all this, and they go into it and stuff. But then it comes with the shadow side of Christianity and all the pitfalls and stuff. And like what you were saying about, you're in that club now. You're not allowed to look at astrology. You're not allowed to throw the I Ching. You're not allowed to do all that kind of stuff.
Burn your books.
Yeah. Do what?
Burn your books. Yeah.
You're supposed to.
Doreen Virtue was a very big angel card reader back in the day. And she very famously became Christian and asked everybody to burn her books.
She said burn my books.
Yeah. I think one thing that I will say is in one aspect of this, I'm delighted because my inclination is very spiritual, and I'm delighted that people are realizing that there's something beyond them that they need to be a part of. So in a way, there is I'm so grateful for this, but I think that what we are missing, and again, I told you that for the last year, I was really solidly active in my own church, and I really put myself in. It wasn't an experiment. I really went in and kind of, was really observing and meeting people and understanding things. And like you said in the beginning, is I don't think we can go back to the old ethic. So what I was seeing was lots of people were coming to the church because they have had it with their level of uncomfortableness in the world or within themselves, or everything they've been doing was failing. And I am guilty, truth be told, I am guilty of moving every time something was uncomfortable. I'm going to move here. I'm going to move here. I'm going to move here.
Right. You did the moving thing. Right. Running girl.
Moving thing. Running girl. And it didn't solve any of my problems. So when somebody radically has a moment of revival and wants to go back to church, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays you got to do it with conscious awareness. And you got to bring your psychology on board as well. And you can't just say, let me just get baptized and relinquish all of my old life and never look at it and only just focus on the Bible from this point out. You're going to still come across the same problems.
Yeah.
Because I believe God wants us to be an active participant in our entire experience.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm missing in that movement, is that I love that people are going back to church, but I see a lot of the traditional church leaders not elevating the congregation the way I'd like to see, to where there is logic and intelligence coupled with their faith and spirituality. I think that they have to be in right relationship.
Yeah, Melissa was really polytheistic in a lot of ways, and she has on the altar, she's got Amma, and she's got Hindu deities. She's got Parvati and Ganesh up there and all of that. She's got Yogananda and that kind of thing. She's got Native American things up there. And then she has a Bible up there, and she has art, heart art, and says Jesus Christ and all of that kind of stuff. So she was really kind of taking the parts out of these different religious traditions that really resonated with her, and just making her, this is come back to the Jungian community and stuff. You're making your own spirituality out of the parts that work for you.
Well, this is the thing that's happening now in culture more than ever, is that all of the external fighting has started to come closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to ourselves, because that's where it needs to actually be worked out, is within ourselves. But so now you're seeing a ton of infighting, and you're seeing it, and you're seeing these internal silent civil wars all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
In the medical system, I just saw that there was something going on in the Catholic faith where the Vatican was somehow going to abolish or chastisement towards like Lady Fatima. And he was saying there's all this, there's inner civil wars within all our religions too. So we have to stop pretending that that our religions and the way humans are doing it is utterly sacred, because it's not. There's so much shadow in the churches as well. And if we're not willing to talk about the shadow in all these systems, from medicine to science to spirituality, and everywhere else in between, we're never, ever, ever going to bridge this divide.
Right. The shadow is going to be concerned with you, even if you're not concerned with it. And then to see these religions as they're psychosocial spiritual operating systems, and they kind of give you the full package for connecting with the divine, and for having proper boundaries with other people, and for what the general direction of the society is going to be. It orients you within society, and it just serves this purpose as a real operating system. And each religion is appropriate for its place, in its time, its people, in that environment, its geography, absolutely, and all of that. And it's appropriate for that. And then all religions have evolved. Our Christianity has evolved. They all evolve, and just, and then because the human being is evolving. And so you have to have an updated operating system. You have to update your operating system. And if you think that, well, the current operating system that I've been using is full of malware and viruses, and so therefore I'm going to go, like if you're working on Windows 10 or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to dump this and go back to, MS-DOS or whatever older version of Windows or something, you're going to have it's going to be totally incompatible with a lot of the things that you want to do now.
Right. You can't, in terms
really
of religion,
go back.
In religion or another system, is that you can't upgrade your operating system while the computer's still on. Like, think about upgrading your OS if your computer's still running.
Yes.
You got to turn down.
Oh.
You got to turn off.
Right. Well, so that's true.
See, and kind of deconstruct and see a broader point of view before you can elevate and make your system more conscious.
Right.
I think, look, God made us incredible human beings, and I think we are coming into the realization of we have a lot more potential than we've been told or we realize.
Yes, yes.
And I think it's important that every leader in a system nowadays, most systems have a utility, but we need to up-level the psychospiritual aspect of it. So, the psychologists need to up-level their spirituality. We've talked about this a lot. They need to come down and integrate somewhere else. A lot of, the Christian faith, I think that let's not keep people naive. Let's elevate the leadership so we can have the logic and the psychology integrated with the Bible. And again, I love the Bible. I consider myself like an original Democrat, an original Christian. Yep. But the level of leadership is still keeping people very, very naive and stuck into thinking that this is all literal and this is very symbolic. But we don't have the intelligence to see, and nobody's strong enough to change that way of being.
It's a real trap, is when you, and this is where the advantage of Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and some of these 20th century people that came in there and said, okay, so to basically recognize that myth is not synonymous with untruth. Myth is not untrue. In fact, myth is the expression of, it is
something complicated that we need to express.
Of human being that is far beyond being able to describe literally. And so you have to use multi-layered symbols and metaphors to be able to and myth is something that's created by the collective unconscious over thousands of years. And so it has in it embedded all these layers of truth, right? So myth is actually like ultra true in a way. And so if you are stuck thinking that everything in the Bible is literally true, and this is, first of all, we don't act that way, because we don't take the Old Testament and just literally act on it and stuff. So we ignore what we don't want to follow in the Bible. And then, but the stuff we want to follow, we say is literally true, because we're afraid that if we drop the idea, some of it's literally true, but if we drop the idea that some of these things aren't literally true, they're metaphorically true, and that they have multiple layers that are beyond the literal, then we have to go through this limbo of going, wait a minute. So if it's not literally true, and then I'm not going to go to hell and all of that, well, this is kind of what the boomers did when they got out of the church in the 60s and said, you know what, that's just like Santa Claus, that's not real. And then they ran away from that, and then they're leading this sort of ungrounded kind of atheistic life, and that's not working either. So you have to go through that kind of that red pilling, that initiation, to go, okay, wait, it's not all literally true. And then you have to go to the next level of finding the metaphorical truth in it that's deeper than being literally true. And then what that's going to do is that's going to take you on a personal journey of interpretation. And now you're interpreting the Bible or these phrases personally, subjectively, and now that's not the same as what your pastor thinks. And so again, you're outside of the club again. You can have a deep spiritual Christian, deep spirituality for yourself, but it's going to be your Christianity. You can still have a relationship with Jesus Christ and God, but it's going to be your relationship.
Right,
It's not going to be your pastor's. And
Jesus
that's where
wants-
you have to go with it.
And it says that right out there. He wants a personal relationship with you.
Right. And then we ignore that, and then we just go right back to the collectivism. And so there is a higher, you could say, Gnostic or esoteric Christianity that you can use as that can be your operating system. But it's kind of like in the computer world, it's kind of like taking parts off the shelf and building your own computer and installing your own apps and having your computer built for you. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because in my experience with the church this past year is that, or any community that has like minds, a tribal mentality within it, is that I don't evolve very much. And I even said to you at one point, I said, I feel like I was falling asleep.
You were.
I feel like I was getting passive. Right? Yeah. Because I wasn't challenging myself with people who were showing me contradicting opinions and views, and I wasn't evolving. Right? I was actually starting to fall into that same mentality that I was victim to when I was a kid, which I was starting to bypass some very real feelings. And I recognized, okay, this is no longer serving me at this capacity, or the leadership or whatever is in this system is no longer feeling like I'm growing in my faith. It feels like I'm being stuck in a system of humans that aren't willing to see beyond the traditional rhetoric. So,
right. This is collectivism of any type, whether it's whatever type of ideology or ism you're in that, and now everybody believes in the same thing, and you're stuck. And it's like, it's the same thing with the New Age people, and they're stuck in the love and light thing and all that, and they can't break out of that either. It's the same thing as the Christians. They have their love and light thing that they're stuck in.
Right.
And so
and the last thing that I'll say is that's why I believe that we need to be better at understanding our evolution comes when we invite different perspectives in, and people who have a perceived opposite. To me, it made so much sense when I was challenging certain providers in the healthcare system who I knew were very logical, left brain oriented, very scientifically oriented. And I was saying, let me come in from this feminine perspective and let's talk about healing. And what would it look like if we could couple healthcare with healing? What would that look like?